Welcome to HomeWord. I'm Jim Burns, and I'm so glad you joined us today, helping our kids navigate their transitions of life. That's what we're going to be talking about. Hey, getting through high school, entering adulthood, those can be demanding and overwhelming experiences, and it's a process. It's overwhelming for the kid. It's also overwhelming for the parents. Michelle Nietert is with us today, and she's a licensed counselor, professional counselor, co-author of several best-selling books, including a new book called Strong and Secure, 100 Devotions for Young Women. I actually read this book, okay? So I'm admitting it. I'm a guy, I read the book, and I loved it, okay? And she's a co-author of that book, and it's great. I really suggest strongly, and we'll talk about this later. Also, all that information is in our podcast show notes. But today we're going to use Michelle in a different way. She is our HomeWord counselor in residence today. Now, nobody said life is easy. Nobody said parenting is easy. But it's still the most rewarding part of our life. And we all need wisdom. We all need counsel. And Michelle, who's a popular speaker on topics regarding things like mental health, faith, parenting, we're going to take advantage of her expertise today. So if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed or looking for some good advice on being an effective and confident parent, you have come to the right place. Michelle, I am so glad you're on our podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, it's a privilege. And it's funny, we had a little technical difficulty. And during that time, I got to get to know you better. And I'm even more excited to have you on than I was before. And I was excited. So here we go. A lot of parents tell me that they just feel overcommitted and underconnected with some of their primary relationships. So they're overcommitted with busyness. And then they get underconnected again with even, their marriages or with their kids or whatever it might be. What advice do you give to a person who wants to overcome overload in their life?
Well, gosh, sometimes I feel like I'm the pot calling the kettle black here. As you all know, I'm juggling quite a bit even this week. But one of the things I would start with to tell a parent, there's a form of therapy we use in our counseling center called acceptance and commitment therapy. And one of the components of it is that you work out of your values. So we help kids determine their values to work out of to overcome anxiety. I think parents need to do that sometimes too. You can actually buy cards on Amazon and kind of go through them. I want to make a Christian deck because it doesn't really reflect all of our values. But something that I have to do and our family has to do is we're juggling ministry and work. And I've got kids right in this age range, a 15-year-old and a turning 18-year-old about to go off to college, is we have to look at our family values and then we have to make some really tough decisions sometimes, Jim. And the way I start that is because it'll swim in your head and just overwhelm you is to get it on paper. Because anytime you get it out on paper, you're bigger than it. When it's in your head, it's bigger than you. So you get it out on paper, and then you start taking a look at what do we care about? What can we let go of? How do we let go of enough to stay present? And I have a life coach who I don't really love when she does this, but she shows me this rubber band. And she keeps reminding me, you can only stretch it so far and it'll break. And I use that a lot with moms in my office of just helping them be realistic about what their kids are committing to, what they're committing to. And it's hard choices. My son at 15, Texas is a football state, decides to play football for the first time in his life. He's never even been on a team, caught a ball, anything, but he's in a little private school and he loves those coaches. They're his track coaches. And I think they wore him and me both down. And so I'm stepping away from my speaking schedule beyond what's booked. We've pushed everything out because you just can't be everywhere at once. Right. And then I think when it comes to big things, let's say your kid's got broke a foot so you got physical therapy on top of everything else. You've got to look at what you're saying to yourself. About those
Sometimes
things.
We have to say the word no. I can't do that. We could do it, but is it worth it? Kathy has always said to me, she hasn't said it lately, so I must be getting better, but she'd go, we have a Messiah. He's doing very well. You do not need to replace him, Jim. And, we did that when our kids were in a certain age, especially, when we're talking about the transition, because, you have children and you have adults, but teenagers are a transition. They're not really defined as well because they're not children. They're not adults. And when we had the kids that age and, my speaking ministry can kind of get out of control, and we decided to cut back. And amazing, God still used other people to speak. And I said no to a lot of speaking, times requests. And you know what? I was there and present at home much better. for me and for my kids. So I agree with you there, and I love the values thing. We did that. We have on our refrigerator. We don't have it now, but when our kids were younger, we created values, family values. We had it listed, and periodically I would take the girls. I have all girls, so we have no hormones or drama in our home, of course. And the I would show them. I'd say, "Now, what is? You guys are having an argument about this. What about that value?" And I'd get an eye roll. I wasn't going to say that I would get the. That's the most amazing thing, Dad. You are amazing. But they could probably still name those values. And I thought it was really interesting that we've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. Well, we've got 4 grandchildren, but the 2 older ones, the daughter now has values on the refrigerator, and I'm like, awesome. She was the one who bucked it the worst in terms of that doesn't count. That doesn't mean anything. But I think you're really right. We need to make decisions out of values, is what I hear you saying.
Even so far as like I used to teach in the local church a lot when they were little because we
Mm-hmm.
were doing it,
Yeah,
family mission statement and family meetings where you're
yeah,
evaluating those
yeah.
values. I
Good.
learned that from Gary and Greg Smalley
Yeah,
before I was even had children, and it
right.
really does pay off in the long run. My kids still know our scripture, our their mission statement today, and
Great.
they are living out loving God and loving others well. I can see
Yeah.
it in their
No, it's
lives.
really cool. No, that's cool. I mean, it's. I'm suggesting to any of our listeners or those who are watching on YouTube, really do something like that. And Michelle just mentioned Gary Smalley, Greg Smalley too. Gary is now passed on, but his input of writing down those values, it's still critical. And he wrote an incredible book 25 years ago on this, and it still is a great book today. Hey, I want to ask you a question. I had this experience. I was actually in Dallas, where nearby where you live, and I was speaking on understanding your teen. I wrote a book on understanding your teen. That's kind of what my PhD is in, and that kind of stuff. And a woman came up to me and she handed me a book, and I could tell it was used. She had several teens by this time, and she had read it well, I guess. And she said, "I think the point is this: it's impossible to understand teens." And she went on to say, "I have a daughter who's now entering into adolescence, my last one, and she is a stranger in the house." Now, do you agree or disagree? Do you think it's possible to understand teens, or do you think, no, it's pretty hard to understand them? They're going through all kinds of changes.
Well, I'm an adolescent therapist and I used to be a school crisis counselor and I lived in their world. I think it's possible to understand teens if you're
Yeah,
willing to listen,
yeah,
enter their worlds,
yeah,
have compassion for their world looking so different than yours.
yeah.
And I think it takes all three of those things to begin to get an understanding. And the biggest thing I worry about as we get to those ages with those upper teens, especially, parents can become cynical and they need to be curious because it's
Love that.
not the way it was. And I will tell you, I today sat beside a little preteen girl. I was doing a book signing and we were reading one of the books, God, I Feel Scared. And as we were reading, I would just pause and she would say, I was scared one time when.
Mm,
And then I would say, "Tell me more about that." And her mom's like, "I didn't know that." Her mom was my publisher. I don't know if I should say that, but she's like, and her mom has a lot of great tools because she's
right.
around me a lot. But she's like, "I learned so much just as you sat
Sure.
there and you talked to
Yeah.
her and you
Yeah.
were interested." But let me tell you something else though. I was fully present, even in a bookstore. I wasn't
Hmm.
looking around. I wasn't thinking about anything else I had to do. And I
Yeah.
think that's part of that overcoming overwhelm too, is to learn to train our minds and you might have to use something like mindfulness 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can smell to get
So
yourself
good.
grounded in the present. But we've got to be present to understand
Right.
this age. They're moving fast.
That is so good. That's a mic drop because we need, as parents, we're
Yeah.
so busy. We're just trying to get through Thursday or Friday or whatever. And yet we need to stop and listen. Listening, kids see listening and view listening as the language of love. So when you're listening, you're going to, and it won't always get great input, but I just find that all of my career being with adolescents, if I'm listening, I'm going to hear something that's important and they're going to sense that I like them. And
I
I
think
really
that's
like
the
that.
main thing too, is
Yeah,
really communicating that I'm
really good.
here for you and I'm interested in you and I
Yeah,
enjoy my kids so much. I'm going through grief. I'm sure there are other moms that relate to this. As she's about to go off to college,
right,
I have these waves that are coming over me
right,
because I'm going
right.
to miss her.
Yeah.
Now, I
Well,
will tell you this, I miss the 18-year-old more than the 15-year-old. So hang in there, guys.
that is so good.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
true. Well, even the young adulthood, when they're saying, "I'm an adult," but they're not acting like an adult. and it's hard, and we have to reinvent the way we do parenting at every stage, but especially when as they do move. You have to reinvent the relationship at 15, then you have to reinvent it again at 18, and they've never been an adult. We've never been the parent of an adult, so there's things we can be learning on that too. Speaking of that, you have a book. It's called Strong and Secure. It's 100 devotions for young women, and I love that. And we a lot of times we don't talk just about devotional books. I'm holding it up for my YouTube crowd here. Beautiful book, by the way.
Thanks.
And like I said, I read it. But in this book, there are some distinct issues for someone going through that transition.
Yep.
What are some of those distinct issues and challenges for a young woman today in today's culture that you're finding?
Well, and I'll tell you why I wrote the devotional, because I bought my child lots of Christian nonfiction, and teenage girls don't read Christian nonfiction self-help.
Right.
They just don't
Right.
read it. So I had to give it to them a chunk at a time with a
Yeah.
good scripture and an application and kind of a takeaway like we use at our office as
Yeah, I
they're
love that.
dealing with things like anxiety. Some of them are getting so overwhelmed, they're
Yeah.
starting to feel hopeless. They're struggling with depression. And this is the first time my publisher let me loose, because I've written some books for tween girls like Loved and Cherished. But this one, they let me loose to talk about when a friend's suicidal, when a boyfriend breaks up with you, when you're struggling with eating or not wanting to eat because of your body image. So, I got to claw into the things that kids sit across from me and my team of counselors every week and struggle with.
Yeah, no, and that I really appreciate that. And you did bring up anxiety. I'm going to talk to you later in this conversation about anxiety and whatnot too, because it's so key so prevalent among not just young women but also young men, and for many reasons. One of them is this: social media. And let's talk about kids and social media and technology. How are these issues affecting kids' self-image today, even their mental health?
I think it has a lot to do with what you let them do with it and how you approach it with them.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different camps, and I've been with different Christian authors. In fact, on the Raising Mentally Healthy Kids podcast, one of them and I debated. She didn't let her kids have a phone till they left, and mine had them by like 7 because we're dropping them off at theater, and that's the only way to communicate. And so I think the first step with social media is to train your kids and their algorithms once they start. So my kids didn't get social media based on an age. They got it when they could define who they were, separate from anybody else defining them. And then they understood the purpose of social media, which is connection with the people they know in real life. And then also to share, like my daughter was able to say, Mom, you share God's light and love through social media, encouraging one another. And so when they understood those things, I was ready to let them loose. But even then, once we made the account, I searched for things. It wasn't your show, but I found actually young Christian adult women that are well known in this country. And I started watching some of their videos. So that way that would push her algorithm towards that as she started.
Wow. That's a good thing.
So those are the things. But let me tell you the dangers of this. If you don't do things like this, if they don't know who they are, they're going to feel very defeated very quickly. They might even get the hope of winning the lottery. They might define themselves by their likes, which is not a good thing.
Right.
And also, they might learn some things you don't want them to learn. Or if you're not careful, by the time a kid's got social media, you better have had the critical conversations with them about gender, sexuality, depression, anxiety. You better cover that because you don't want somebody else doing it.
Right, right. And, the number one place where kids are getting sex education today is the internet and social media. So, and yet all studies, both liberal and conservative, Christian and non, say that the best sex education comes from parents. And if parents talk to them, then they'll be less promiscuous and less confused. That doesn't mean they'll be perfect. It's just not, no guarantees. But it's a lot better coming from parents. And yet too many parents are allowing TikTok or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever to be the teachers, YouTube, to be the teachers of sex education to our kids. And that's just not right. You're right. And that's at any age. So what I hear you saying is, there's consequences to both good and bad, of social media, but we've got to learn to teach them how to use it effectively. We have to create a media safe home. I didn't hear you say, here, you're young and here's your, just go for it. Have a great time. You now you even have more responsibility to teach them about how to use it responsibly. and be
Well, my
responsible with
daughter
it.
laughed. She says her best graduation present is I took her screen limits off. And they've been on for ever since she's
Right.
had it. And I was like, "Congratulations, you're an adult. I
Yeah.
am done
I love
parenting
that.
this part of your life."
Yeah.
And she was thrilled. And you know what? I kind of looked the other day. Her use, I can still see her usage. It's not changed much. So
Yeah.
she's
Good.
staying under that
Great.
2 hour limit because her brain's kind of changed, trained to do it
Yeah.
now.
Love that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
very interesting. Boy, we could talk about that for a long time. I want to talk about another issue.
sure.
I'm on a radio program called New Life Live. It's the largest counseling radio
Oh, yeah,
program.
John and Henry trained me like 25
Okay.
years ago, so
Great.
I know those guys quite well. Yeah.
Super. They're two of my very best friends. And so I'm on that show regularly. And a woman called last week and she was saying that her daughter was in a sorority and her daughter was drinking. And she was afraid that the drinking had gotten out of hand to the point that she might be coming as her some other family members, not the mom, it sounds like, uh, potentially an alcoholic.
Mhm.
The daughter's excuse was everybody drinks in the sorority and everybody pretty much smokes pot. And that's kind of where I'm headed. And I'm not willing to give it up, but I'm also not going to freak out over it or something. And you have a presentation where you talk about drug proof your kids. What can a parent do when not just for the sorority type, because that's a little bit older, what can they do to help kids make right and wise decisions about sobriety and really being drug proof? And of course, alcohol is a drug. It's a known drug. It's different. It's legal after 21, but it's still a drug. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm gonna take a deep breath because I'm gonna step on some toes here. The
Sure.
first part of it is you're gonna model that
Mhm.
you don't use it to cope with your own emotional stress.
Yeah.
Because when
Yeah.
they hear, "I just need a drink," or,
Mhm.
"Oh my gosh, it's 5 o'clock somewhere." And some of these phrases, mommy wine time, these
Mhm.
t-shirts and stuff, they're sending the wrong message to our kids. They're
Yeah.
teaching them to emotionally buffer with a substance,
Right.
and that's risky. So that's step one. Step two is honest conversations. We have had conversations in our house. One parent drinks, one doesn't. We've talked about one parent has a history of alcoholism in their family. So the parent that does drink only drinks one serving an hour and usually no
Mhm.
more than two servings a setting. And because I've been an addiction counselor, we talk about what a serving looks like because the
Sure.
average kid who orders a drink at a restaurant. And here's something I did very different than my own Christian parents. My dad was the head of pastoral development with the MAF. They let me sip. And I chose not to let my kids sip. I told them, I don't know if you're called to be a Daniel or, maybe a Samson or someone. And so I want you to make that adult decision
Mm.
yourself
Mm.
with the Lord when you're an adult.
Yeah.
And so I've made a very different decision than I really thought about it. I didn't have a choice. And so I think that also, I think I hate to say this, and I'm breathing heavy here too. We need to rethink what um, the next level of education looks like for our kids as our
Mhm.
culture is radically changing and what they're able. I had a mom today on my speakerphone of a friend say to me, the biggest regret I made is I dropped her off when she was in no shape to go into a new situation
Mm.
with new people
Yeah.
and not be able to cope well.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and people, why do kids drink? They drink because it works. And so they weren't coping well, and now that helps them, or it makes them feel good. I'm not saying these are good reasons, but that's
You know what I think
that's
the number one is? I think it's different. I think it's
go ahead.
social anxiety,
Yeah,
and I think they're numbing their social anxiety. I
sure.
have adults who
Yeah,
think they're more fun because of that too. They
yeah,
don't wanna stop in their 40s because of it, because 'cause they're
right.
not the same person, and we need to go through social angst. I love what my son's youth minister said. He came home the other night. He tells me all this crazy stuff. He's not usually doing that, and I said, "Wow, this was quite a conversation." He's like, "Well, our youth minister said we're going to have to learn to do it awkward with God. And I just thought I'd start with you." And so
That's a
I
great
think kids have
compliment.
got to learn to do it
Yeah,
awkward
so good.
without a substance.
Yeah,
And
that
I
is
think that's the driving force. That's why they do it at the sorority because they're uncomfortable around new girls and the
yeah,
boys. And so
yeah,
they're drinking to loosen up and to be a
yeah,
different personality instead
yeah,
of developing that
yeah.
personality on their
I
own.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. We could go on all day. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. So good. Such a great conversation. And don't forget, on our podcast notes, all things Michelle, she has several books. The one we're kind of working around is a great book. I'm showing it right now called Strong and Secure. And we'll be right back. Don't go away. More to come. I've got some questions I want to ask her about faith and then anxiety, stress, depression. And anyway, we got some more to talk about. We'll be right back. Hi, Jim Burns here. I am so excited about what's going on at HomeWord. Some of you are just learning that things are changing around here, and one of the most exciting things changing is our new president, Marcus. And Marcus, tell us what's going on with HomeWord.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it. So excited to share with you, give you a glimpse of what God is doing in this new season at HomeWord. And it's a blend. It's a blend of new and tried and true. And our mission right now is, how do we take these 4 decades, these 40 years of ministry, of resources, of principles that God has been changing lives throughout the nation and beyond, and expand that, but also tether it to a younger generation. And the way we're going to do that is through a blend of tried and true resources and principles and events, as well as new initiatives. And I'll start off with the new. On the new side, we have a new website. We are rebranding. We've got new staff. We've got new faces and new voices to our growing social media presence, and that is wonderful. But also on the tried and true side, we've got a Refreshing Your Marriage retreat that has been an amazing, impactful event. We've got our conferences like Trainer for Trainers, and our resources like our books that we're going to continue to write and expand and change lives. Speaking of which, Jim, share with us the latest update of what's going on in the book world here at
You
HomeWord.
got it. And I'm excited about your leadership, and I'm excited about where we're going at HomeWord. It's going to be pretty incredible. We've got a book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. We have other books, of course, but that's still on the bestseller list after 5 years. Even this month, it's on the bestseller list. And now there's a new one that's going to be coming out called When Your Adult Child Strays, Trading Heartache for Hope. And I'm doing this book right now, and there's going to be a course with it. And we have other books on sexuality and things like that that are really, really making a difference all around this world.
So with all the things going on right now at HomeWord, here's what you can do. God is putting in our heart this desire and this plan to expand our Refreshing Your Marriage conference that I recently attended, and it helped my wife and I have a breakthrough that God was working in our hearts for a while. But beyond that, I saw other couples experiencing the same thing. So we are going to expand our Refreshing Your Marriage conference, take it to other cities, and we want to be able to not only help make sure that happens, but also those that can't afford it, that need to be resourced and some scholarships. So we want to make sure nobody misses out on a chance to get their marriage refreshed and to draw closer to the Lord. So I'm asking you to make a special gift above and beyond to support that. Thank you so much, HomeWord.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Burns. Great conversation today with Michelle. And Michelle has written a great book, like we just talked about, Strong and Secure. You know what? Pick it up. Get to know her. Get on our podcast show notes, and all the information is there. Michelle, I want to talk about faith and kids. Most recent research is showing that about 65% of kids who graduate from high school also tend to graduate from God. At least for a while they leave. There's better news coming back, that they're coming back, and there's other things. But, again, 65%, big stain in the world of youth ministry, family ministry, things like that. And yet we're seeing that there's about a 300% better chance if there are faith conversations in the home, which is fascinating. But again, what do you say to the parent whose young person is struggling with their faith or not wanting to go to church? It's boring. They're still living in the house. So what does the parent do if they go, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go to that church. It's boring, or they're hypocrites, or, the many reasons that they don't want to go.
Yeah. Well, the women's book, Make Up Your Mind, comes with a partnership with D6 Family, and we talk a lot about one out of 168 is not enough. So we can't take our kids to church for an hour and expect them to live this life. And so I want to start by saying, before they get there, disciple them in your homes. And if you don't know how, get somebody to teach you. I go into MOPS groups and I talk about the intentional summer experiment, and my kids laughed because it barely lasted half the summer and I was done. But it was the idea that I was going to be intentional when they had more time about
Yeah.
teaching faith, having faith conversations.
Right.
And I think we continue these even when
Mm.
they're struggling. And here's what I
Right.
want to give parents a lot of hope. The struggle is good. It's part
Yeah.
of them learning to own their own faith if
Yeah.
you don't freak out. Can I say
Yeah.
that here? Freak out.
So
You
good.
can't
Yeah.
freak out. So, what you want to do is again be curious and equip yourself. I still use, I was a counselor at Pine Cove. We used more than a carpenter back then with kids who were
Sure.
struggling with faith. I still use it today. It's cheap in my office, and kids will read it and have conversations with me about it. And so,
Awesome.
I love those conversations. So I would tell parents that. Now, I would say something else too. I think you pick your battles as a parent, and a battle
Mm.
I'm picking till the day they're out is they're going to be in a faith community. And let me tell you what's really hard, what I had to
Mm.
do. We're in a different faith community than, I hope my pastor's not listening, than I would have picked,
Mhm.
because my daughter started babysitting at a church, and then the next thing I know, she's leading worship at the church for the youth, and then the pastor hears her and he wants her on Sunday morning, and I'm actively involved in leadership at a different congregation about 2
Yeah.
miles down the road. And then my husband and she are going to one church, my son and I are going to
Yeah.
another church, and finally I just said, we got to get this family together. My son starts going to that youth group, and we've joined that church. And so you find a church your kid likes, I think, during
I love
this
that.
age range, and you be a little more uncomfortable maybe
Yeah.
until they're grown. And I think that is so valuable. So you don't like this? It's boring. Well, let's find somewhere you're less bored. Let's find a
Mhm.
shorter
Yeah.
sermon. Let's find somebody's funnier. Let's see. And I don't love consumer church, but the other
Right.
thing I will say is the opposite of that. My kids like can't wait to go to church because they serve in church. And the
It's neat.
younger you get them
Great
serving
tools.
in
Yeah.
church, and
So
you
good.
and I were both youth ministers. We know this. You plug those kids in to run in the soundboard and all the different moving chairs, because other adults are mentoring them. And the sticky faith research says, and Gary said it a long time ago, you know that from that Bound by Honor book. I heard you mention it. Christian mentors that are not your voice. I don't know why, but my mom's voice irritated me in puberty. But my pastor's wife could say the same thing, and I thought she was so
Right.
cool, and she was a
Yeah.
genius. And we've got to help our kids find that when they're
Yeah.
struggling. You can be struggling and still come hang out with people and move
Yeah.
chairs.
So good. So good. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So good. You have such great practical wisdom on this. I want to go back to we mentioned the word, but kind of anxiety, stress, and depression.
Mhm.
It's so common among young people today. And if a parent senses that their child is depressed or struggling, I mean, there's a sense of to be an adolescent means you're going to experience stress. But what do you do? What does the parent do besides don't be depressed? Get over it. Whatever. How does a parent help them work through their anxiety and their depression and their and the stress of life?
So I want to be careful here. John Townsend and I had a great conversation about this on my podcast. We got to be careful about the fragilization that's going on in our country. These kids, if a kid thinks they're depressed by Dr. Google,
Mhm.
within several
Mhm.
months to a year, they're going to be depressed, because that self-fulfilling prophecy and
Sure.
their stinking
Sure.
thinking is going to come into place. But let me say this very clearly. If your kid asks for help, just listen to the parents who've cried in my office. Get them help as soon as they ask.
Yeah.
Even if the counselor says, I mean, one woman, I said, I think he's fine. She's like, best check I've ever written, back in
Right.
that day to see. And
Sure.
let me tell you what, I love what Crystal Payne says too. Build a relationship early with a mental health professional, but find the right one before you're in crisis and you find the wrong one.
Yeah.
I used to say, find a great counselor. Now I need to say, find a great counselor who's got Christian values that align
Mm.
with your interpretation
Mm.
of scripture, so that you don't have family conflict due to their therapy.
You're amazing. Okay. I agree with you. That's great. We don't have much time left, but your book that's called Strong and Secure, 100 Devotions for Young Women. How do you hope young women will use this book? What do you hope happens? Somebody hands them the book. A lot of times, instead of them going out and buying a book, it's going to be a parent who's going to, hand it to them. What do you hope happens?
I think what I hope happens first, I had a woman say this with the younger teens, is that the mama reads it with them, or grandma
Oh,
calls
that's
while
good.
the kid's
Yeah.
at home that
Mhm.
she bought the book for, and says, let's read it together.
I love it.
And they talk, or let's read this page and let's talk about
Yeah. Share it.
gratitude and how we
Yeah.
cope with anxiety with gratitude, or
Yeah.
something like that. But there is a very specific theme to this book. It's the father heart of God. And a
Mm,
lot of girls
mm.
have difficult relationships with their
Sure.
daddies.
Sure.
I had that. And
Mm,
I had a misskewed view of God because of it. And through some great counseling myself at a very young age, I learned that the Father is for me. He loves me. I can't mess up. And he doesn't raise the bar all the time. That's a common
right.
experience with girls and their dads.
Right.
And
Yeah.
some of their dads are absent. The father's also present. So this book's got 5 sections: the protection, the provision, the peace, the presence because of
Mm,
loneliness in this
yeah.
age range, and then finally healer for the wounds that these girls. 1 in 3 women by 18 are going to be sexually assaulted in this
Right.
country. They
Right.
need the healing. They need healing, but
Right.
they need God involved in that.
Yeah. So good. I appreciate it. I have written a number of books. And I used to write devotional books for kids, and I used to challenge them to read a book, and it would kind of be spend 50 days with God, even if it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes,
Yeah.
because you're going to form a habit for a lifetime. And I'm laughing because those books are long gone, and my ministry has kind of moved away, not away from kids, because that's why I do ministry. I think about kids, but I'm coming alongside the parents now. But I'll have people tell me years later that this little book helped them get in the habit of spending time with God. And so when I looked at your book, and I said I read it, I loved it, and I also I envisioned somebody taking this book. It's really insightful, but it's easy to read and it's short, my kind of
Very short.
devotional. And
400
what
words.
Yeah. So what's good
Yeah.
about it is you get in the habit of doing that, and so then you finish strong and secure, and you go, okay, what's next here? See, and
Well,
and
that's why
and
we did Strong and Secure, because the Loved and Cherished girls said, "What's next?" The
yeah,
Managing Your
love it.
Emojis kids said,
Sure.
"What's next?" And I think that's so
Yay.
important, and we wanted this. This is
Great.
deeper, this is tougher,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, because they're more mature now. They're the
Yeah.
girls that we've grown up with.
Great. 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 So if you have a daughter, in anywhere in that age group, pick this pick this book up, give it to them. But you know what? Don't just give it to them and have them set it on the shelf. Maybe you read it with them. It would take you a few minutes a day. But that may be your best investment. And studies do show that when there are faith conversations that aren't preachy, aren't lectury, aren't horrible, but are good in the home, then kids will stay in the church. That's pretty cool. In fact, I'll talk about that. Let me just say, Michelle, thank you so much. I feel like I found a new friend. You're amazing.
Thanks.
So good to be with you. And thanks for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, that was one good conversation. And before we go, I want to mention a couple things. One, as I mentioned, that 65% of kids leave the church after high school. Like I said, that's a horrible statistic. So let's talk about this for a minute. I mentioned something just in our conversation that I want to bring back. 3 quick thoughts. One is have faith conversations in the home. Remember I said this 300% greater chance that kids will stay in the faith if they have faith conversations in the home. And by the way, that study was done in Ventura, California with Barna, and in Fort Worth, Texas, with what's going on in a seminary out there called Southwestern Seminary, and that they weren't doing the study together. It just came out that it's such a good thought that if we have these non-toxic, non-preachy, keeping it short and simple, well, maybe you start with something like Strong and Secure if you have a daughter in that age group. Secondly, is serve together. Okay. It's funny because Michelle talked about this so well. Her kids serve, and that's why they feel comfortable in the church. Well, the call to Christ is the call to serve. Don't wait till they're adults. Have kids serving. Our church just 2 weeks ago had Serve Day. We had 1,200 people, helping clean up at a public elementary school, and they did all kinds of cool things. And then they also made they had a lot of food preparation, things like that. Well, guess what? The kids had fun. Plus, they were some water balloons. I'll admit they threw some water balloons and had some fun, but they served. The call to Christ is the call to serve. And then thirdly, we talked about the media safe home. Create a media safe home. It's what Michelle talked about. We have to help them become responsible users of technology. Eventually, what we say here at HomeWord is we say, even when your kid is 2, 12, 18, help them become responsible adults, and we'll add who love God. Well, I think we also have to help them become responsible with their media safe home and with their media use. So teach them to be responsible. There you go. Okay. Just 3 quick ideas. Time to go. Been great. If there is anything that we can do at HomeWord to come alongside you, do not hesitate to connect with us. HomeWord, WORD.com. Until next time, I'm Jim Burns. Thanks for stopping by.